From netball to rugby, from uni captain to playing professionally for Wasps ladies and securing multiple England ladies national contracts, Claudia's trajectory in her sport and her career has been steep and fast. In late 2021, Heartbreak occurred when she had a serious injury to her neck, which threatened to end her very promising career.
Yes, I was in a training session just before the Autumn Internationals actually started. I got a ball from the line out on our 5 metre, so I get tackled. Probably my own fault. I fought back against it. I knew I was so close to the try line. I think because I delay it, then all the forwards then join and I just get like mushed. Because I was driving forward, head tucked, all the weight and the pressure and everything came through my head and sort of compressed my neck to my chest. It was painful from the get-go, and I remember being like, oh, my neck. Everyone stopped, backed off, physios and whatever came over. We just thought it was a soft tissue thing, so you know, as is relatively standard in rugby. We got an MRI scan pretty quickly, and the MRI scan is really bizarre, like it just doesn't look right. That's a very quick decision for the surgeon. He was like, you can't play.
Claudia's inspiring story and amazing journey now, it's absolutely not to be missed. Before you start this episode, please can you click subscribe below and follow our social handles in the description. It's a massive help and it keeps you up to date with all the exciting announcements from the podcast. So, Claudia, thanks for coming on. Thanks for seeing us.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, thanks very much for coming in. So, I'm going to throw you a challenge first off. We do it with everyone that comes in.
Okay.
So, I hope you're ready for it. So, I'm going to give you like a minute, maybe 2 minutes tops, just to talk about Claudia from birth to now. Literally start to where you are now. What it will force you to do is, because you've got kind of like 1 or 2 minutes, it will force you to kind of pick out maybe key parts, rather than just everything about one particular element. So, you up for the challenge?
Yeah.
Take it from start to present day. Yeah, take a deep breath. Go on, you crack on. Here's your 2 minutes.
Okay, so born into my family, I've got 2 older brothers and a younger sister that came along 2 years after, that sort of stole my limelight probably from the beginning. Right, little nuisance. But grew up incredibly sporty, loved every sport imaginable, really, stuck my head into everything. Actually, ironically, I think my mum once told me, I think when I was about 7, that I wasn't as good as my brothers because I just wasn't bothered. Like, I couldn't be bothered to play sport. Why wasn't I doing this? Why wasn't I doing that? And I was like, all right, here we go then. I'll give it all a go.
Competitive.
And I threw myself in, and I'm probably the most competitive out of all of us. Well, it's a tough call to make. But yeah, played every sport, loved school as well, so it was always a bit of a toss-up between the two. But tried everything and then put off rugby, didn't want to try it, didn't want to give it a go because I thought it was too boyish. I was, all of those sort of stereotypes associated with rugby, didn't want to be associated with them. And then my mum actually died when I was 17, and I kind of went through, well, actually I was just 18, and I kind of went through a bit of a weird place. It was a bit of a down in the dumps, a bit rubbish. And then had a year out and then went to uni and was like, all right, I'm just going to give it a go, give something totally new a go, and then came into rugby, loved it. And then sort of fast forward a couple of years, 3 years later, I was getting my first cap for England, and then got my contract the following summer, so it all became pretty
quick.
Go from then, and then a couple of injuries, bits and pieces, but here we are now. 19 caps for England, Wasps women captain, which is my biggest accolade, I think. That was really cool, but not currently playing rugby because I've got an injury, so all over the place, ups and downs.
Ups and downs, and that brings us to present day, so plenty of stuff to talk about and dig into, I think. So you mentioned about your kind of upbringing and stuff, like, and family. What was that all about? What was that like? Yeah,
that was hugely important. So I was the sort of kid that would beg my parents to go on a sleepover, and then the second I arrived at a sleepover, I'd be like, oh no, what my family doing back home? Like, I didn't want to miss out on that, didn't want to be left out of whatever they were doing. So always really got on my family, loved like little outings. One of my favourite memories was I think my parents had gone out and they called us up and we were all at home, and they called us and we were like, oh, everybody put something warm on, we're going out and it's Friday. And we were like, oh, where are we going, wouldn't tell us. And we all went out and we went to this like banger car racing evening. We just watched loads of cars, like basically smashing
Yeah,
into
smashed
each
up,
other.
yeah.
Yeah, it was incredible. But yeah, we always did that. So as a family, we're always out doing bits and pieces. Really close. We still go out and party together. So, which is quite good fun. People always find that quite interesting in a nightclub.
Yeah.
Like, who you here with? Oh, well, my brother's over there. My other brother's here. My sister's over there.
Yeah, people stay away then, won't they?
Yeah.
You lot being watched. Got your own private security.
Yeah. But yeah, it's cool. Like, I was always the one that got chucked in goal and pelted footballs out, or playing cricket in the garden or whatever it was. So we've always played sports, always spent loads of time together.
So it sounds like you got quite a competitive nature anyway. Yeah. How was that with your brothers and sisters and stuff like that?
Yeah, and I think
they're quite sporty as well, right?
Yeah, they are all really sporty. We all play rugby. We've all played rugby at different times. I think my brothers would love to claim they've taught me everything I know, but we.
Are they older or younger?
They're both older. Yeah.
Okay. You're always going to get that then.
Yeah. Obviously. But yeah, I think we always had a rugby ball with us. So we'd go to the beach or go to the park or whatever it was. Always had a rugby ball, unless it was like my mum, my sister, me, and then we might have a netball with us.
Yeah.
Or we play a bit of rounders or something like that. But yeah, always messing around. We used to play slow motion rugby in the lounge, which I mean really isn't a thing. We used to put on banana
Is
pancakes.
that a thing?
No, I don't think it's a thing, is it? But we used to put on banana pancakes by Jack Johnson.
Yeah.
Always did it, and then we'd play slow motion rugby, and we'd just like pick each other up and like slam dunk each other into like the sofas and stuff like that. Like pretend to score tries and whatever. But no.
So I remember doing that sort of stuff, but I did it with wrestling.
Yeah.
Wrestling. It was
dangerous.
doing moves onto the sofa or off the arm of the sofa that was like this. Like my mum and dad had this big sofa. It was horrible. My mum listens to these, so sorry, mum. But it was really low, and then the sides were like this high, so you couldn't put arms on it. I don't know why. It was just some old
you just, like, get
weird sofa.
Into it, like.
Yeah, and I used to just stand like at the top and just start elbow dropping onto the sofa and doing suplexes and loads of different things. So yeah, it wasn't rugby, but I get what you're saying there.
Yeah, no, as kids you come up with all sorts of things, don't you?
Yeah.
You're always messing around, coming up with silly games.
It felt like I was in a ring at the time.
Yeah.
I look back now and I think, crikey, I was so stupid.
I think I had my first injury. I split my chin open when I was 4 because we were all up in a balcony with my cousins in Greece, and we were playing some like fight off the imaginary pirates. We're all fighting off these pirates, and my brother, who was 6 years older than me, jumped off the bunk bed onto the floor, and I thought, oh, I can do that too. Jumped off. Didn't obviously go so well as a 4-year-old.
Yeah.
Smashed my chin on the floor.
Straight on the chin.
I was straight into hospital for stitches.
Watch at 4. Starting early then.
So yeah, exactly. That's how competitive I am. Oh, you can do that. I can do that too. Like.
Yeah, 4. Crikey, I can't even remember when I was 4. So long ago. So when did we obviously in coming doing these pods we have do a little bit of research and find out a bit about you and stuff. So
yeah.
When did you move to Dubai? So your family went to Dubai, yeah?
Yeah, so I moved when I was 12. So I was there from 12 to 16.
So what was the whole reason for that?
It's just my dad's job moved out there.
Okay.
Yeah, total change of scenery. I loved it. I was at the time I was at an all-girls grammar school, which I didn't really enjoy. I went from primary school where probably most of my best mates were boys, out playing, stuck in the mud or football or whatever at lunchtimes, and suddenly I was in this like all-girls grammar school where you just sort of like sit and chat at break time, and I was like, what am I supposed to do with all this like energy that I have that normally I run around with? Like, so I wasn't really enjoying that particular school for the year. And then obviously my dad was like, well, we might move to Dubai. And I was like, yeah, let's go. Like, that was, we were all on to my parents.
What did your dad do?
He works in property development. So he was it makes sense being out in Dubai.
Yeah.
Sort of property development, a bit of urban development, that sort of thing. So he sort of travelled all over the place working. But yeah, so that was a change of scenery, but I mean, I loved it out there. It's a pretty
What is
cool
Dubai?
lifestyle.
I mean, I've not ever been to Dubai, and it's somewhere where I look and I think a lot of people rave about it, and I look at it and I think I'm not really sure whether it's somewhere I'd want to go. There's a lot of rules and stuff, isn't there, around like you can't do certain things and.
Yeah, there's a fair amount of rules. I think it's more about respecting the local culture. And even though there's a huge expat presence, it's still, this is still very much like our country, and this is the way we do things. So like, you're very welcome here, but as long as you respect the way we live our lives and whatever. So yeah, there are rules. I think the media always makes it sound worse than it actually is.
I mean, I don't know, so correct me if I'm wrong, but like, you can't hold hands in the public or something. Like, is that a thing?
I think in theory, yes. But like as the law is written,
do they enforce that
you
sort
can't
of stuff really,
like
or
show
no?
affection. I think, you're not supposed to show affection. I'm not really sure, but people still do. I mean, you walk down the malls and there's people holding hands. It's not an issue.
Yeah.
But like you're supposed to cover up, so you're supposed to you're not really supposed to have like too much skin showing.
Is that just women? Or is
no,
that
kind
men
of
as
across the board, yeah. But then, so like if we went to the mall, you might wear like a jeans and a vest, or a t-shirt and shorts. But you wouldn't wear like a skimpy vest and a pair of short shorts. Like, it's just a bit. You would feel out of place as well because people have just got more clothes on.
What's it like over there? Is there like a kind of party culture over there? Is it more? What's the?
Yeah, I think it's I think people grow up quite quickly in Dubai. It's quite safe. Well, I felt like it was quite a safe place.
Yeah.
So from quite a young age, you're sort of with your friends, getting taxis to the beach, going to the mall.
Okay.
Maybe there's quite an American influence, so potentially that's quite influential.
So you went there when you were how old?
12.
12 till
16.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's quite a big 4 years growing up,
like
innit?
15, 16, you're going to house parties and.
So what were you doing in Dubai? Same thing.
Just in school. Yeah, just in school. So. Playing sports, going to school. I remember my first PE lesson absolutely dying because it was September and we were out playing netball on the courts, and you can imagine it's between 35 and 40 degrees, yeah. And I was like, how are people surviving this? Like, even the 2 laps around the netball court was killing me off, and everyone was like, it's okay, you'll get used to it.
Yeah.
So, all right.
I think so.
Give me 2 years now, mate.
Come from -2.
Yeah.
So is that when you started playing netball? Because you were netball before rugby.
No, yes, I was, I mean, I played pretty much everything, but I started playing netball probably when I was in year 5. So what's that? Was it 8 something? 8, 9, something like that.
9.
And I can remember getting into the netball A team at school, and I was so chuffed. I was so proud of myself.
Goal attack.
Centre.
That's the only one that I know.
Yeah.
Goal attack.
WA.
Goal defence.
They're quite self-explanatory, aren't they? But no, I was like a centre wing attack, and I ran home. We didn't live far from the school, but I ran home through the alleyway, got to the door. My mum opened the door, and she sung a song to me. She used to call me Pussycat, so she was like, Pussycat, Pussycat, where have you been? I was like, I've been playing centre on the A team, and I was so excited. I was like, wow, it's just fitted with this song. I was so. It's probably the first memory I have of being super proud of something that I'd achieved. It was just getting into the netball A team at school.
Yeah, things you look back at those things and you do look back fondly on it. My son's playing football. He's just changed teams at the minute, and my mum is clearing out one of the rooms, and she saved all of my old cuttings of when I used to play football in the town. And you get your headlines, don't you, in the Chronicle, which is a local paper, your town paper. Curtin does a treble or a hat-trick or whatever it is, and she's given me all this stuff over a couple of month period, and he's just started playing for a team called Jets only literally last week, and 2 days ago she gave me a picture of me in the Chronicle playing for Jets at 11 in 1999, which is showing my age a bit, 34, but it's a headline and a nice picture, and it's just nice to be able to show it, but I didn't even remember that until I had that presented to me and sort of say, look, this is what you were doing.
Same thing as
I
well,
completely forgot that I played for Jets, and he's just joined Jets, and I was like, wow, he's 2 years kind of doing that, and I was at Jets at 5 years, and oh really, Dad? Did you play for Jets? I was like, yeah. What, for my manager? I was like, probably not, because he was 2 years. He was 2 years under me at school, but same concept. Here's a picture.
Yeah.
Do something with it.
Wow, that's amazing.
But until you really get the stuff, you don't really remember, do you?
No, absolutely, and they're so cool. I think we've got a whole box of different newspaper clippings and stuff. Because
mate, you must have tons of stuff coming through with what you've done at uni and Wasps
I don't know.
and stuff.
To be fair, I probably need to keep more of it. And my parents were definitely better at keeping it than I've been. Yeah. But yeah, there's little ones of us just at sports day, where it's just a little clip. You happen to be in the photo that's made it to the local newspaper about
tiny
your
in the corner
day.
or whatever.
Yeah, that's me.
That's me. I got 4th in one race.
Yeah. But no, so I think Dubai was cool. It was real cool. A couple of my friends had boats and stuff. So you finished school. We finished school at 1 on a Thursday because the weekend was Friday, Saturday.
Yeah.
And you'd be off on a mate's boat going wakeboarding or something like that. Like, it's a style of life
Different,
that you can't complain about too much. But yeah, it was cool.
You can't really compare it to the UK, can you?
No, no, it's a little bit. It's probably
there'll be no Sunday roast. It'll be a Saturday roast, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it's weird. There is no Sunday. Well, I don't even think we had roast. Barbecues, lots of barbecues. Barbecues, jumping into the pool, barbecue, something like that.
Sounds like summer, doesn't it? Yeah, sounds good, doesn't it? Well, look, you've knocked on the head some of my preconceptions about Dubai, so maybe if I'm lucky enough one day I can go and have a look at it and see what happens. But
yeah, have a look.
I just remember not to hold my girlfriend's hand, just in case. So, what do you think when you look back at your kind of early years then? Like, what were you I know you were really sporty. What were your kind of aspirations? It sounds like you can remember quite a bit, and some people I talk to can't remember anything from their kind of first early years when they were a kid and stuff. So you've got a lot of info there where you've kind of gone into real detail. So what's your kind of most fond memories, and what were you aspiring for when you were younger? Can you remember?
Oh gosh, I guess I probably never really knew what I wanted to do. Having said that, I knew I wanted to play in the Olympics or go to the Olympics or represent in the Olympics. That was like, but I don't think I really voiced it. Like, I never said it out loud.
Yeah.
I think we saw Kelly Holmes came into our school when I was in Dubai, actually. So I must have been 13 or something.
Yeah.
And she came into our school and spoke to us, and I was just like, wow, she's amazing.
Because at that point she would have been
in her prime. Yeah. And absolutely adored her, and just thought, God, I'd love to, be someone like her when I was older.
Yeah.
But yeah, I really had no idea. I was the sort of person that was like, couldn't make a decision for myself, still can't make a decision.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think I really picked my GCSEs or my A-levels. I was just like, Mum, what do you think I should do? Like,
go with the flow. Yeah.
What do you think would be best? What should I do at uni? What should I do here? Like, so even when it came to like careers, I wanted to play sport. Did I think it was going to actually happen? Probably not. Did I have a backup plan? Not really, no.
So when did you know that this could happen for me?
Probably not until like end of uni. Like, so at that point when I'd been speaking to
so that's quite late, really, isn't it?
Yeah, really late. And I still wasn't really pursuing it. Like, I was still loving playing sport and just wanted to know where I'd get to. But when I started playing, I was playing netball, and I knew I'd never really make it in netball.
Yeah.
One of my teachers already told me that. They were like, well, you're too short, you're never going to make it in netball. I was like, cheers.
Cheers for that.
Thanks, okay, well, I can't change that. So it was late, but then at the same time I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I was just like, I'll take a year out, do some travelling, and then I'll go to uni and just see what happens. You're quite relaxed about it.
So I think, like, my daughter's going to be 17 in November, and just from knowing kind of the decisions that she's had to make around her exams that she's got, I think she's got one exam left this week and then she's done. It's really difficult. I can't remember my own options at the time, really. It was so long ago. But for her, the world's changed a bit. There's a lot more tech around, a lot more opportunity. But I think when she was looking at what she wanted to do, it's a lot of pressure on people that are 16, 17, 18 to go and have a plan and actually understand exactly what they want to do. And I look back to me, I didn't really know what I wanted to do probably until I was 25.
Yeah.
And I had to experience stuff to understand what was out there. And when we were looking at different colleges that she wanted to go to and courses, she was like really late in deciding what she wanted to do. She didn't have a clue. But I think, again, typically with this podcast kind of exposing poor aspects of social media as well, like with social media and people that are in the public eye, the perception is that you should know exactly what you want to do straight away. And that's just not, for me anyway, that's just not the case. And it sounds like that wasn't the case with you either, really. Yeah,
not at all. I completely agree. Like, I think I always got a little bit jealous of those people that were like, I want to be a doctor, or I want to be a lawyer, or
they've got it figured out,
and they just knew, and they'd known for however long, or I want to be a policewoman, policeman, whatever it is, and that they just knew from however young that that's just what they wanted to do. And I was like, God, that makes life so much easier if you know that's what you want to do, and then you can just sort of align everything.
Yeah.
But then on the reverse side, I don't think there's anything wrong with not having a clue and just sort of trying to keep your options open.
Yeah.
And I think you can still change your career at any point. Like, it might take a couple of years of studying or whatever. But like one of my parents' friends, I think at the age of 40, he decided to become a lawyer. And then he, out in Dubai, we knew him, so he decided to become a lawyer at the age of 40. He specialised in Arabic law, I think, or something like that, which is why he was out in Dubai. Yeah. He was an Aussie guy himself, like, just, didn't have any history in that, but was like, I think that's what I want to do. So he just sort of changed careers. So I think it's always possible to realign if you decide that what you're doing isn't quite what you want to do. I think you've had quite a few career changes, haven't you? I was doing bits and pieces anyway, so
yeah, like, I like to keep the variation because like I'll get bored.
Yeah,
and it's as simple as that. Like I'll get bored easily. I'm really task orientated. Like it's one thing. If I look at a day and I've got nothing, like my partner, for example, if she's got a day off and she's got nothing to do, she's quite comfortable with that. She'll just relax, chill, potter around. She'll be cool with that. Whereas that's my nightmare.
Yeah.
Like, I've got to be doing something. Like I don't care what it is really. I just want to be. I need to be doing something because I'm like, well, I'm going to waste time. Like I don't want to waste the time, so I'm going to go and do that. And that then sends me into different. And that's sometimes a bad thing because then it spreads too thin, and you're doing a bit of this, a bit of that, and you're not really doing 100% of anything. But yeah, just variation, just taking those risks, and kind of. I think we spoke to Ben about that. He was talking about taking the risk and emigrating to Spain, and he wouldn't have got his job in Hunted
if he didn't do that.
And then subsequently his job where he's working full time now for the security company, and then the Australian hunting, which has just come out this week. He wouldn't be doing any of that unless he'd have taken a risk to change some stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think you've got to stay open-minded. I think we've also got to be careful about how we influence like younger people and the decisions they're making. Like I know a couple of people just sort of like dropped in, don't be a lawyer, you work so hard and you get paid not sufficient, you don't get paid as much as you should do for the hours that you work. And said the same about being a doctor, and said a couple of other things, and don't be an accountant, that's boring, or whatever. And I was so easily influenced by all this. I was like, you know what, you're right, I don't want to be a lawyer, I don't want to be a doctor, I don't want to be an accountant. And then actually
you may have found that path
when I've looked back, I've gone, maybe I would have enjoyed that, or maybe that is something that I could have put my mind to and sort of worked towards. So I think there's so many opportunities out there. There literally is everything for anyone.
But I think when you're younger, certainly when I was looking through her kind of like brochures and all this stuff, and I was looking through thinking, like, there's so much more out here than this. Like, she's like, yeah, but I don't really know what I want to do. I was like, that's all right.
Yeah.
And she's like, all my friends have decided. They know what courses they've already applied. And we're like 3 months down the line and we haven't applied for anything.
Yeah.
So maybe you just need to apply for some stuff. Maybe we need to go see some stuff, speak to some people. Like, just keep it quite relaxed. Like, we've got time.
Yeah, absolutely.
What do you enjoy, and seeing if we can find something that's in when you enjoy. I didn't want to say it to her at the time, but what she's going to be doing in that course there, it's probably not what she's going to be doing in 10 years, 5 years. We all know that she could go and toss off her GCSE, her exams now, do nothing in them, fail everything, and still could be in 10 years' time running her own business, being successful, being happy. That's anything's a possibility. But I didn't want to tell her that now. She won't study, and she's hard enough to get to study as it is.
Yeah.
But I just think, especially with social media now, so many positives. But the one big negative is that there's so much influence that I think a lot of young people now want to be that next influencer and bang a couple of videos up, and that's my life made. Get a load of followers, and that's how it is. And I just think, I've got friends that do that, and it's a full-time job. But what she doesn't know is that they spend every day planning these videos. Like 5 videos go up a day. They spend 3 days planning these videos. It's a full-time job. They want the narrative. They want to make sure it's done properly, engaging the right audience at the right time, depending on what's trending. It's not just stick a video up and see what happens.
Yeah, randomly do it, put it all together. There you go. Oh, finished.
It's hard. It's hard. Like even the learning process we've had with the podcast, it's hard. Like we made tons of mistakes in terms of what works, what doesn't work, what we feel is the right thing to do and the wrong thing to do. But I just think social media's, it really does. And family as well do the same, like you just said. Those little comments, you shouldn't really do that. That sticks with younger people. And there's a lot of young people that listen to this. And the message that I keep trying to get out is, regardless of what you're doing now and even if you don't know what you want to do, just don't rush it. Like, whatever comes will come. As long as you're looking and you're open to opportunity and you're not just sitting back and being lazy, you've got to look for stuff and be open. But there's no rush, and you could find your calling at 30, 25, 20.
Yeah, absolutely.
It
can change at any point, whatever.
Yeah.
Just stay open to ideas. But I think, especially on uni, I think there's sort of like a changing narrative around it. So I think we see it now as a stepping stone to whatever career you want to do, and therefore you're like, okay, what's the end product? What career do I want to have? And therefore, what do I need to do at uni? But I think what you realise is that that's not what university's there for. So unless you know categorically you want to be a doctor, therefore you have to do whatever at university. Other than that, see university as a place to go learn more about something that you're passionate about, because it doesn't really matter what you study at university. As you say, it's probably not going to be linked to whatever you do.
What did you do at uni?
So I did economics.
Okay.
But if I went back, I probably wouldn't do economics, because you can get into the same jobs with any host of different degrees. let's say even if you wanted to be an accountant, you still don't have to have done maths or economics at university. You could have done geography, you could have done history, you could have done whatever it is that you want to do at university because that's what you're passionate in, and then you go and become an accountant. It's like totally separate.
What's your opinion on uni? Like, because people are quite split on this. Is it a waste of time? Is it something that... Because a lot of people have an opinion. I mean, I used to have an opinion that uni was just... Again, probably an old hat opinion, because I left school when I was 15. I'm not interested in... I didn't want to study. I couldn't learn. I was shit at tests, and I didn't revise. I just wanted to work, and I was lucky enough to be able to get a job. I pretended I was 16. I faked my passport on the photocopy, took it in. They thought I was 16 and a half. Got the job, and I was getting paid like 100 quid a week at that age, which is a lot of money, and it was cash in hand, and I was enjoying it. So I just sacked school off straight away, and all I was interested in was I want to go and get pissed with my mates on that money, and I'm going to work hard, and I'm going to spend it. It'll be gone in a day, and it was just that cycle for a few months. I didn't feel like uni was... I thought, well, uni's not going to earn me anything. I don't really understand. I mean, none of my family went to uni, so I didn't exactly have somebody that could sit down and say, well, actually, this is a good experience for you. So I naturally had... probably not the most positive perception of uni when my daughter was talking about the potential of what she wanted to do, whereas my ex-partner wanted to go uni. I was more like, just see what happens. Like, if you go uni, you go uni. If you don't, you don't. You just need to see what happens. But are you glad you went uni?
I am, because if I didn't go to university, then I wouldn't have started playing rugby. Okay. And then that's where my rugby career started. And like, essentially at university, I was able to basically be a full-time like sports person. Like I'd go from that to the library and do some studying, but I mean, I could train whenever I wanted. We had great facilities. I was playing twice a week. I was training basically every day. And
if you're enjoying that, it's living the dream, isn't it, really?
Exactly. And I was with my mates at the same time. Like, I absolutely loved it. Having said that, do I think it's needed for everybody? No, I don't think so. I think you need to go to university if there's something that you want to learn more about, because that's what it's for. It's for education. So unless you're, like we said, unless you're really passionate about a certain career and you know university has to be a part of that, then obviously that makes sense. If you've got something else that you just want to go learn about, then go to university. It's amazing, like the resources you have access to, the lecturers, in terms of providing structure to building like a growth of knowledge or whatever, then it's excellent. And the sports are brilliant as well. But other than that, I think it's just a game of statistics. Like, you can go to university and be successful if that's what you want to be. You can not go to university and be successful. But then, as you said, if you didn't go to university, incredibly successful. If that, if that's what people are judging the result by, are you more likely to be successful if you go to university? Perhaps the statistics say that. But then it's just because you happen to have jumped through more hoops. If you don't go to university, you're just as likely to be successful. You just know that you've got to jump through slightly different hoops, and you've got to be willing to do it. Perhaps you've got to have a bit more self-drive. I don't know. If you don't go to university, you've got to find the opportunity yourself, be a bit more creative. It's just, as I think some people see it as a bit of a tick box exercise.
There's no right or wrong, I don't think, is there?
Absolutely
not. Do you think you'd have found rugby in the way that you have if you didn't go to uni?
No, definitely not. I think I was too...
When I read about you and when I wanted to get you on and was thinking about your kind of journey, and this I've felt this the same with another chap that we had on. The episode's not gone live yet, but it will go live slightly before your one, I think. That's a pro footballer. The way that he found football and the way you found rugby through uni, one little choice of not going to uni, no rugby. One choice of him not going to this tournament where he got scouted, and then he was at that particular team from when he was 8 till he was 22.
Wow.
Like, one choice, and he potentially, I know he could have got scouted somewhere else, you could have got into rugby at somewhere else, but it just amazes me how these little choices, when you look back, could massively change the whole perception of what you're actually doing. Your whole life can change. No experiences of rugby in the way that you've had it, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I actually really don't think I would have found rugby at all if I hadn't gone to university. And even the particular university I went to, because rugby was so big that we had the whole collegiate system. So we had college rugby, and then we had university rugby, and then we had the Premiership side in the north as well, which also didn't have an enormous depth of players. So because they didn't have an enormous depth of player, it meant that I could also get into that squad a little bit easier than if I'd gone even to a university closer to, say, Harlequins or Saracens. Then I probably wouldn't have played Premiership rugby at the level that at the stage that I played.
Because you went
rugby.
really quick.
Yeah,
like, it seemed to happen super quick. Like, you started rugby late. Well, when you think about some other sports people, everyone's got a different story, haven't they? But people that have been playing it all their life, and I know you played it all your life anyway, but just may have been with that club for years and years, and it kind of felt when you got your break, when you captained your uni, didn't you?
Yeah.
And then you got that break in 2018 for Wasps.
Yeah.
And it's like you then got, within probably a 3-year condensed period of uni, Wasps, England, it's like come together in a period of 2 to 3 years.
Yeah, it is crazy.
That's quick.
Yeah,
really quick.
It was crazy, and I think at the time when I looked at it, it wasn't, not that it wasn't quick enough, but like things weren't happening how I wanted them to happen.
Yeah.
When I look back retrospectively,
that's
I'm
the
like,
massively
wow,
quick transition.
Yeah, that was mad.
Like a dream transition, really, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think actually my first couple of caps were criticised by people in terms of like, now you've thrown her in the deep end too early, like she wasn't ready, and I wasn't ready. Like I was not ready for my first cap when I got my first cap. Yeah. But at the same time, would I be where I am today if they hadn't done that for me? If they hadn't,
it's experience,
chucked me in and just gone like, let's see if you can survive. I don't think I would have had the development and growth that I've had over the short period that I've had it since. So yeah, I mean, that first tournament was incredibly tough. I came out of it in like quite a bad way, thinking that I was a really rubbish rugby player and that I was couldn't do half of what I thought I could do leading into that tournament. Yeah. But at the same time, that meant that my reaction to all of that, and it was still, it still allowed me to jump up in terms of my development. Yeah. And if my first cap had sat a year later, then just in terms of experience,
you'd have had a year of nothing.
In the environment, all of it would have it wouldn't have been there.
Yeah.
So I think, retrospectively, you look back and you're like, okay, it was definitely needed. It was a huge opportunity for me. Definitely out of my depth. Yeah. I'd played. I got capped in the November, and I'd only started playing scrum half in the September. So I'd been playing for like 2 months at scrum half. You're talking like 8 games maybe. Yeah. And all of a sudden, then I was playing for England, surrounded by these like incredible players that some of the majority of which have been playing since they were like 6 years old. Yeah. Huge amounts of experience. I had like World Cup winners there. You had World Cup silver medalists. You've got Olympians. You've got people that have just been playing rugby for such a long time, got all these accolades behind them, and all of a sudden I'm in this scrum half position, which isn't even like reactive to other people. I'm like trying to control
You're controlling the game, yeah.
And it was incredibly difficult. And when I look back, I'm like, wow, I'm surprised I even survived it. Yeah. And it was tough, but I loved it. Absolutely loved every second of it. And then I think it has been hugely beneficial since.
Who's the best player you've ever played with?
Oh,
and you've got to name names as well. Can't sit on the fence with this one.
I've got to name one.
Just one.
Okay, best player I played with, it has to be Katie Taylor-McLean. Okay. Because she played at 10. I played with her when I was 15 at DMP Sharks. She is an unbelievable player, like World Cup winner, England captain, played in the Olympics, played for years and years and years. Such an incredible skill set as a 10, and I played off of her at 15, and that was amazing. Like, for somebody who again had very little experience in the game, she made me understand it. Yeah. Even like she'd be like, okay, Claude, just come, like just appear on my inside, hold your line, I'm gonna drag across, come on my inside, and she'd literally drag, something would be happening out here, and then she'd like drop me under on a switch, and I'd go straight through the defence. Yeah. And you're going, how does she know that hole was going to be there? It's because she was constantly analysing the game the whole time she was playing it. So I think I learned so much from her. And then when I played scrum half with her, so different. Like it's really difficult because at that point I'm not playing off of her, I'm serving the game to her. Yeah. So obviously there's a lot more like
there's reliance on you for like decision making, tempo, everything. Yeah.
Absolutely. And that was a really difficult position to be in as such an inexperienced player. But again, still like learned so much from that side too. So I think being able to play off and then to her was huge in my development as a player. Yeah. Not necessarily easy at times, but yeah.
Well, if you develop, nothing ever easy.
Yeah, I don't think any 10 that's like world class like that is going to be. They control the game, they run the game, they've got their ideas. Yeah. They know what they want to do. You've got to be able to get the ball to them as quickly as possible. Otherwise, you can't unlock the rest of the team. Yeah. But obviously, that puts a lot of pressure on you. Even now, I feel the pressure 4 years ago, I definitely felt the pressure.
Yeah. It's not improved. Maybe the handling of it's improved.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, with experience and stuff. So you had that step up from your uni team and then the Sharks, and then you went to Wasps.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So tell me about that kind of. How did you manage to get into Wasps? Like, what was that kind of opportunity look like? What was the day that you kind of had the call? I mean, how did it all kind of come about?
So it's a bit of an odd one. So I'd been speaking with England at that point, and they'd kind of floated the idea of me moving to scrum half. So I was playing full-back wing at the time.
Yeah.
They floated the idea of me moving to scrum half. We're like, what do you think about that? Do you want to go away, practice some scrum half passing? Which, I sort of went away and did, and was like, all right, if that could be a possibility in a little while's time, I'll do that now. So I started doing scrum half passing, trying my hand at box kick. I was awful to start with, like really awful. Passing was awful.
Yeah.
But so I kept working with DMP. Got to the end of the season. Durham were very good. They offered me a master's to carry on because it meant I could carry on playing for the uni. I ended up turning that down because I didn't think I could play scrum half at DMP. They wanted me to play 15.
Okay.
So that kind of ruled out that option. And then I kind of was looking at how different teams played, what sort of structures I liked, because everybody has a different sort of flavour of rugby that they play.
Yeah.
And for me, Wasps played quite an expansive game. So I basically just got hold of Giselle Mather's contact details and called her and was like, well, I think I texted her first, saying who I was and could I speak to her.
You bottled the call and went for a text.
Basically, I was like, can I arrange a call with you?
Yeah.
But I wanted to at least give her the heads up that I was going to call her.
Yeah.
And then I was just so impressed from the get-go of talking to her in terms of, like, she knew who I was, she knew what position I played, she knew that I wanted to play scrum half, and she already came at me with, like, a development plan of how she was going to get me into scrum half shirt at Wasps, into an England shirt at scrum half, and that she would be really excited to have me in the squad. And I was like,
wow,
yeah, it was amazing. And I'll forever be thankful for the opportunity that was there, because there were some brilliant scrum halves at Wasps, but Giselle really took a leap of faith on me and was like, okay, we'll work with you throughout all of pre-season, and then threw me in. I started the Premiership side as a starting 9, having not played any games really at scrum half.
Yeah.
Which was amazing for a Premiership club to do.
Well, yeah, Wasps are a huge club, huge outfit.
Yeah, so that was really cool, and hopefully I've paid them back in it. I hope I've paid the favour back, and I've made it worth it. But it was an exciting opportunity.
What do you think your fondest memory of playing with Wasps?
That's a tough one. There's been loads. I'm actually going to go for. Can I go 2? So there's one. 2
if you want.
Can I go 2? There's one where I wasn't actually playing.
Okay.
But it was last year, and we were playing Saracens, and it was the tightest match we've played, and it was the first time we came into a glimpse of potentially beating them whilst I'd been at the club. We'd beaten them the year before I came, I think, and it was the craziest game of rugby. All our subs came on, and they were crawling around the pitch, everyone was knackered. We were defending for probably the last 8-10 minutes, just continuously. There's
long 8-10 minutes. Yeah.
Oh my god, there's an amazing clip of one of our second rows, Sam. She literally she makes a tackle, she gets up and she crawls, she can't even drag herself up. She crawls back on side, crawls herself up. By that point, they've had a phase, and then they run straight at her. She makes a tackle again. She's into the 79th minute. But we held on, and they knocked it on the edge, and we ended up winning the game. And I wasn't playing; I was water girl, but I was just this is incredible. It was absolutely amazing. So that was huge. And then in terms of actually playing, probably my first go I had at captain, which was just really cool.
So how did that come about? Did they approach you, or what's the?
Yeah, Giselle asked me if I'd at the beginning of last season. She asked me if I'd would like to be captain, or it was co-captain actually.
Okay. With
Kate Alder, who had been the captain for 4 years, but turned out in hindsight she was pregnant, so she was stepping away. So was asked to be captain for the year, and was just
why do you think they
really
gave you that
excited.
opportunity?
I don't know. Giselle said it was based on pre-season, so we always do these wacky pre-season tours where we go and do random stuff. So this particular one was down in Devon, and we were camping. We're staying at an army base. We're all dressed up in army gear, being marched around and commanded and told what to do, and woken up at 4 o'clock in the morning to go and do whatever else, and camping out in the forest under those sheets, at the army.
Sounds like an SAS. Yeah. 2 days winds thing. Yeah.
And it's just mad. Like, you might get like 3-4 hours sleep a night, and then at the end of it, we were playing a pre-season game against Exeter, who were a class team, and we were just like, just you're mad. Like, we can't do this. Like, we can't go play a game of rugby having had 4 hours sleep on average over the last 3 nights,
and done all the stuff that you've.
And we've been eating ration food and eating in the mess canteen and whatever, and we were just like, what is going on? Like, but it's amazing because it pulls everyone together, and you're out in the woods building these canapes to sleep under, and like all telling stories about your biggest achievement, or what you've struggled with or whatever, and you just kind of like really gel as a team.
Yeah.
And I think she just came away from that and just I don't know, I guess she must have just thought that I could do the job. Or
so if I was asking her what your kind of maybe main 2 or 3 traits are, like your real strengths, what would you say?
Oh gosh. I am
except from being able to build.
So fiercely competitive, I would say, would be one of them. Because I am incredibly competitive, and I think that helps to drive like standards and expectations, but also I really want the team to do well. Like, I really care about the team, because I mean, everybody obviously cares about the team, but I really want to win, because I really don't want to lose. So driving all of that, and then I guess potentially a bit of fairness. Like, I really care about fairness. I want everyone to be included. I want everyone to be heard. Hopefully, I would hope that she might think that, or that my teammates might think that. But yeah, probably competitive but fair. Hopefully.
Where do you think your weaknesses are?
Well, I have lots of those. You could probably say the same things. Competitive is definitely a weakness.
Over competitive.
Yeah, 100% overly competitive. It can.
Give us a scenario where you think that's gone against you.
It comes against myself, in terms of I'm far too judgmental of myself. All the time, which makes training really difficult, and then that can influence my teammates as well. So
so is that being overly harsh on yourself?
100%. I would. I'm constantly sitting down with Giselle, and she's constantly reminding me that rugby is she says the perfect game for imperfections, or something like that, as in like you can never have a perfect game. It's impossible. And I'm constantly looking for that perfect game, whether it's and I constantly think I should be able to pass the perfect pass every time, and I've thought that ever since I started playing scrum half, which is completely unrealistic, and it means that I put a huge amount of pressure on myself in training, when training is supposed to be the time to make errors and make mistakes, and then that can probably flip onto my teammates. So if I'm expecting perfection from myself, then there are probably times where I expect perfection from my teammates, and obviously that's not,
you're expecting something that's not
impossible.
Going to happen.
Something that's never going to happen. They're not going to catch every single ball perfectly. They're not going to run every line perfectly. They're not going to make the perfect tackle every single time. And then if that leads me to be frustrated, and then I present that frustration, and then I have to kind of like bite back on myself and be like, come on, Claudia, what are you doing? So that can be a bit of a turmoil, and that definitely puts a huge amount of strain on myself, and definitely puts strain on my teammates at times.
So just on that with yourself then, and I remember a video I was listening to actually about Johnny Wilkinson. Something really similar about him putting that much pressure on himself for perfection, absolute perfection, through practicing, consistency, time that he trained, and just general kind of, he used to his own words, he used to torture himself for the amount of perfection that he expected from himself. Whereas when you look at it, he's actually delivering probably over and above anybody else. He's probably I remember watching him, England, and different things that he'd done, and of all the players in his position, I look at him and think he's just the ultimate professional. Like, he's incredible. But hearing about him struggling himself and mentally with the pressure of being not to anyone else's standard but his own standard was his biggest critique, and he said that, and in hindsight he felt that went against him, and if he could do it again, that's the part he would change.
I think that is important, and I know it because I've read and I've watched a lot about Johnny Wilkinson, because he's an amazing rugby player, and is in a, everybody's in a high pressure situation, but he's in a particularly high pressure position at 10, kind of trying to control the game. And even with like the knowledge of knowing that it's not good for me, I still can't
do it anyway.
I still can't stop it, and it's really
Yeah.
difficult. And you try and I try to come up with like little ticks or whatever, so I'm like, okay, if I just smile or laugh, like a simple thing like making yourself laugh, you're like, oh, it doesn't really matter. Or it might even just like bring a little bit of tension out of your body, because none of it helps. So if you make an error and then you tense up and you try and correct it, but you try to overcorrect it, so then the next pass is wrong because you're trying to focus too much on it, whereas actually what you'd be better off doing is just almost treating each pass as totally independent. It's done, it's happened. There's still an enormous number of opportunities to correct it later on in the game. Like I think in the first New Zealand game in November, I passed, I think it was like 62 times, which is the most number of passes I've ever made in a game. And all I could think was, I remember the 3 passes that were wrong. And they weren't necessarily wrong, but as in like I could remember the 3 that didn't go where you wanted. Exactly what I wanted. Having said that, that is still the most positive I've come out of a game of rugby about myself, and I've been like, you know what, that was all right. Like I'm quite chuffed with that.
Do you come off a pitch most of the time feeling that way, or do you come off most of the time, regardless of the result, thinking about exactly what you just said? I should have done that better. Yeah, I think it changes. It depends on the result. So if it's a really well-earned win and you're just elated and relieved to have won the game, in the moment you're like, wow, like we won it. And like in that very moment of like finishing the game, those first couple of minutes, you're like, that was amazing, we all won. But this like the little bit after that, it's like half an hour to an hour after that, or when you then go to sit down to do analysis and you're like, oh, I know what's coming up, this and this and this, and you just remember, and I am very bad at doing it, you just remember the bad stuff that happened in the game and the really sort of like the mistakes you make, and I'm almost embarrassed to watch them. I'm like, yeah, it's coming, I know what's happening. Like I throw the ball above your head, or I completely missed the call, I hit the wrong person entirely, or whatever it is. And like sometimes you can justify it, and then other times you're like, I don't know what I was doing. But it's really difficult to try and judge something retrospectively. You have to sort of think about exactly the position you're in the game. So perhaps the ruck was really noisy, or the fly half was looking this way as they're communicating what they want, as opposed to at you, and you actually really struggled to hear them, or someone managed to get a hand onto the ball just as you were passing, or something. There's so many different factors that can influence it. It's just trying to weigh up judging yourself and trying to be respectful of the situation. So there's quite a lot of comparisons with that sort of situation. Is at a very high pressured, high level, and an elite level, but that happens in all everyday life for everybody watching and listening to this. It's you might go to work and have a day at work and think that shit, and beat yourself up about it. You might go and do something in your personal life and beat yourself up about it. It's, that happens every day. So,
absolutely.
And I know for a fact that I speak to a lot of people that follow us and stuff like that regularly, every week, every month, and one of the biggest things that I can take away from most of the conversations is that people are so self-critical about their self. Nothing's ever good enough, and I think it's just a human nature. I do it, we all do it. What would you, because I know there's going to be a lot of people that feel this way and that have got examples, what in your kind of elite sense, what do you do to try and move forward from a situation? So if you have done something that's not to your standard, personally or professionally, what would you give to somebody listening to this as a bit of a tip, or a couple of tips to say, well, this is the process I go through?
In fact, to put it into context, I mean, I've been this judgmental myself probably my entire life. Like I can remember coming out of my GCSE results and I got 10 A stars and 1 A, and I beat myself up about the A and was just like, what have I done? Like, and it was in Spanish. I was predicted a B, like an A was very good. Right? But I think one of my coaches said that, look, sport and everything is up and down, and you've just got to realise that the highs are never as high as they feel like they are in the moment, and the lows are never as low as they feel like they are in the moment. And it's easier to attach ourselves. You feel saying that the highs are never as high, you're like, oh, minute, yeah, they are. Like, they're amazing. But then when we say the lows are never as low, you're like, okay, maybe they're not. But we've got to judge them the same, and that actually, like, everything is about going forward, and you've got to. I think people always say you've got to learn from you got to learn from the mistakes, but you've also got to learn from the stuff that you did really well. Like, it's important to learn from both, and remember that the journey is always ongoing, and you never judge yourself based on what anyone else has done or what anyone else is doing at the time, purely on where you're at and perhaps where you were yesterday. But I think sometimes it's just important to, like, I'm in a bit of a unique situation. You talk through your story quite a lot, and I'm sure you do as well. You know, you talk through your story, and actually you realise that when you say it as a story and as if you're talking about somebody else, you're like, oh, that was pretty impressive, like, that was pretty cool. And you forget that is your life, and that's how other people see it, because you're the one living it, and you see the highs and the lows. So that's exactly the same as somebody else. You know, you look at their life and you go, wow, that's amazing, but they've got the exact same story that you've got behind the scenes of, you know, the ups and the downs and everything else. So sometimes I think it helps to try and look, you know, at your story as a whole, you know, where you've been, where you've come from, where you've got to, know that that's not the end product, but that, you know, so much has already happened, and you forget about the really crap bits.
I think but you limit yourself, I think, as humans. You don't give yourself enough time to have that kind of look, that kind of step back 5 minutes and have a look and think, well, because I do the same thing, you know, if something doesn't go well, make a wrong decision, or something happens and it's cost us money or whatever, you look at it and you're like, I'm an idiot, like, what's going on there? And then you take a step back and you think, well, actually, you know, one of the businesses that we started just before COVID. There's 80%, you know, there's tons of businesses in the industry that have gone out of business. We haven't started with a lot. We've started with a lot less than a lot of people. We're still here. We're actually prospering. We're doing well. We're growing. So stop worrying about this mistake that you've made, because when you look at the whole timeline of events, you're actually doing all right. And I do this a lot. Like, I have mentor sessions every month, every quarter with different people, and, you know, a lot of them tell me the same thing, which is, well, just, you're getting really passionate about this element. Just, it's done. Forget it. Step back. Look at all the stuff that's happened. You're always going to make mistakes. You'll make a mistake next week. You'll make a mistake next year. You'll make a mistake in 50 years. When you think you know it all, you won't. You'll have to learn from something. And I think when I learn the most when I actually just take a step back and think, let's look at everything. Am I doing okay? Are we doing all right? Are my family doing okay? Are my friends doing okay? Everybody connected with the business is doing okay? If that's a yes, then forget about last week, because that, like you said, that pass or that decision could influence you being a little bit tighter for the next pass, or not really just delivering the stuff that you can do to the ability.
Absolutely.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think it's all about just reflecting, really, isn't it? Trying to reflect on where you're at, what you're
I like
doing.
to forget as well. Like, I'll reflect, but then I'll try and forget, because you can reflect and you can over-reflect and you can think about stuff too much. And that's the reason why this podcast is here. Is because I used to think about stuff constantly, to the point where it'd be getting me up at 2, 3, 4 a.m. And I've got nowhere to put that information. It's here. And we've all been there, haven't we, where you're sitting there at night and it could be positive stuff. And I'm just excited. I know it sounds sad, but I'm excited about something that's happening the next day. I always get excited when I'm recording a podcast the next day, because questions are going through my head, scenarios are going through my head. Obviously, I want it to go well. I want the conversation to be a good conversation. I want it to be more than surface level. I want it to be meaningful. And I'm excited about things. I'm also concerned about this, and what if a camera fails, and what if this, and what if that. And it's like, you know, it's better now than it was on the first one.
Yeah,
you know,
absolutely.
it's less concerned, you know, when you go for that experience. But certainly, the reason for it was kind of to bring it together and have an area where, regardless of what's happening outside, I can go, in simple terms, I can go into my garage. If I have that feeling at 3 a.m, I can piss off to my garage, turn the mic on, sit on my weight bench, and let everything out for an hour. And then actually I felt stupid doing it, but then after the first one was recorded, and Kim will know this because it was awful, don't know what I was doing, but actually when I got out the garage at 5:30, it took me 2.5 hours to record about an hour. Wow. I got out the garage and I felt a real sense of relief, a sense of my shoulders just weren't that. No, I didn't feel like I was carrying that much weight anymore. And just from talking with nobody else around, as stupid as it sounded at the time, and as probably shit as the quality is in episode 1, please don't go and listen to it. It was really, I felt a sense of real growth from it, like for the first one. And that was because I reflected, dealt with it, embedded it, done, moved on. And I joke about how poor the quality is now, because I can loads further on. But at the time, it just felt a relief.
Yeah.
But over-reflecting over the same stuff, I don't think is particularly positive either.
No, and I think we often judge ourselves based on like where other people are at. So you know, you go and look at a podcast and you go,
do that with social media, though, don't you? It's like you see these people with the cars and the boats and all these stuff, and you're like, that's wicked.
That.
Like,
why can't I have that?
They're doing this 6 times a year, and he drives a Lambo and all this stuff, and you're like, I'm failing. That's not me. Like, I'm failing.
Yeah.
But you don't know what.
You don't know the story that's gone behind that, and you don't know how many times they've failed to get to the point where they've got to, or whatever.
Yeah, or he could be renting his Lamborghini just for a picture. You just don't know. But you put the pressure on yourself, don't you? Yeah. Thank you very much for supporting the podcast over the last sort of few months or so. We're now getting thousands and thousands of downloads and views every single episode, but that is not all. Big news to come. We're looking for a sponsor for the podcast, and the reason for that is we're looking to take our thousands of downloaders and viewers to tens and hundreds of thousands of downloads and viewers. So if you're interested in sponsoring the podcast, if you're a business owner that wants to get some extra exposure to thousands of people per week, please get in touch. Let's talk at thesilent-entrepreneur.co.uk. What would you say then? So we've talked about some really positive moments, some not so good moments, some challenging moments, and dealing with that. What would you say your lowest ever moment is?
Oh, that's going to be about then that's going to be when my mum died. 100%. That was really.
How old are you?
Really rubbish. 17.
17.
Yeah. She'd been unwell for about 15 months.
Okay.
So really she'd been unwell from the summer, and then in the January we were told she had stage 4 cancer, and that of all things as well, it was lung cancer, and she was, my mum was super fit, super healthy, never smoked, didn't make any sense, but that was just what it was. That was the card that was dealt, which is really rubbish. But yeah, so we were told she wouldn't have that long, but the natural trooper that she was. So that was in the January, and then it wasn't until the end of March the following year that she died.
About a year and a couple of months then.
Yeah. So we were really fortunate. I think that kind of changed everything. We were living out in Dubai. We obviously all moved back to England, but we did that over time as well. So my mum moved back straight away in the January, and we actually couldn't go until the end of the school year, which was like May, June time, because we had exams and everything else. And so there was also that period where we'd kind of gone from like this happy family all living in Dubai to suddenly mummy's back in England, living in a flat on her own, going through chemotherapy, and we were out in Dubai still, and it was like a really weird, we want to be there, but we're being told we have to be here.
You're also at like a 15 and a half, 16-ish?
Yeah.
Difficult time for...
doing my GCSEs. So I was doing my GCSEs. My eldest brother was working out in Dubai. Alex was at university, and my sister was, what's she doing, year 9, so she was doing like exams, end of year exams or whatever. But yeah, so that was really rubbish. That was 100%. Obviously, that is the lowest point, and that whole kind of journey. But my brother is quite good at looking at it sort of with a slightly positive frame, in that at least from that, like our wider family became much closer. So because obviously we were all going through that together, we actually end up, like my mum's sister flew over from America. She lives in America, and she brought her husband and her 2 sons as well. So we all spent a lot of time together. And my mum's one of 5, so her 3 siblings we didn't know as well because they were a lot younger, and we got to know them a lot more and we spend a lot more time with them. So and just like as a whole sort of unit, there was suddenly like loads of friends and family that we were
kind of galvanised people together and
100%,
stuff.
And it was like all because of something horrendous and awful, and you hope that nobody, obviously everyone's going to go through it at some point, but you don't ever expect it's going to be you then, I suppose. No, and not at that age. And you hope it's not going to be you, but obviously it's at some point it is.
So the reason why I asked the question is there's probably been 4 or 5 people that have reached out to me in the last month and a half that have all lost somebody really, really close, like a parent or a brother or a sister or something like that, and they've kind of struggling to deal with it, which anybody would do. I'm lucky enough to have my parents here and stuff, so I can't personally speak for myself, but if that's your lowest moment, what would you say to those people that maybe have only recently started to go through that process, from somebody that's been through it, going through it, is through it?
Yeah, I guess when I try and look back a little bit, I definitely didn't deal with it at the time. I tried to sort of like move on, not even necessarily move on. You can't move on. That's not a thing. You never really move on. Your life does continue, and your life just looks a little bit different. And you continue to grow and develop and change, and you do live your life. It looks different, and you'll always have that missing part of it, but it just becomes a part of you, and you carry on your life. But I think it's really important to try and talk about it, to deal with it, to go through the grieving process at the time, because I think I'm still very much going through it, which seems mad because it happened. It did happen a long time ago. I'm 26 now, so it'd be coming up to 9 years, and I definitely didn't deal with it how I should have dealt with it at the time, which has had huge ramifications for me like later on. And like for a long time I really struggled to like tell stories about my mum, and to appreciate all like the good stuff that happened, even to like look over. I judged myself hugely on like how I behaved over that time. Like, did I spend enough time with her? Did I do this? Did I do that? Like did I tell her I loved her enough? All of those sorts of things. And you can't do that because like you're an individual. Like you don't go to your mum telling her you love her 100 times a day when she's not unwell. But
how do you cope with it now? So you say you kind of still going through that process
by sort of talking about it. So a lot of the people in our lives as a family didn't know my mum, but a big part of that is like telling them about her and like what was she like, what does she do, showing stories, sharing stories, showing photos, all of that, and that kind of like helps you process as well, having lost her, because she's still very much alive, and you get over that. There's like a lump in your throat where you can't talk about it, and you're like, oh, I can't because I'm just going to cry. But actually crying is it's not a bad thing at all. It's a good thing. It's an emotion. Everybody has all emotions. We should express all of them. So and all it does is just show that the time that you did have was worth it. You loved spending time with them when they were alive, and you had that huge amount of joy when they were there. So I think trying to talk about it from as early as possible is a good thing, because
is that something you'd
I'd 100% recommend. Try to talk about it, and don't worry about pestering people or however long. It could be 15 years, 20 years after, 5 years, 2 weeks after. If you reach out to somebody, they'll respond. Like if you're like, actually, you know what, I need to talk to you about this, or I'm struggling with this, or whatever. Like, people want to help people around them. Like, that's why you have friends, you have family, like people that you care about, that care about you. So I think the best way is just to talk about it from as early as you feel you can, because it helps you get through it, helps you process it.
What do you think so when you think about it now, what do you think is toughest to process? What part of it do you feel toughest to process? Because you've obviously done a lot. Is it the fact that you've achieved a lot and you would want her to see that? Is it just the general missing her part of it? Is it that you've gone through tough times and you'd want her there for you as well as the rest of your family? I mean,
like I still have I almost still have weird moments where I'm like, I just pick up the phone and call mum, which doesn't, or call her mummy, which doesn't, I always call her mummy. And I still have them like to this day, where very occasionally I'll just think, I'll just call mummy, and then I'm like, whoa, where's that come from? Like it had no context.
Automatic. Yeah,
it was just, and which is really strange position to be in. And now I can kind of smile and be like, that's nice. Like,
see, I look at that and think she's, even if it's that, the fact that that's automatic, she's automatically being thought of, if that makes sense, in your memory 100%. At the forefront.
Yeah, and she is all the time. But I think that's the hardest part for me, is that it's just the having her, or rather not having her there, just to talk about things with. It's not necessarily that I wanted to, I don't want to see. I'm not bothered that she's not there watching me play rugby, or that she's not there. It's the
smaller stuff, maybe.
Yeah, it is. It's the sort of the daily chat, or do you think this is a good decision, or do you think that's a good decision? But I guess your relationships around that change. So perhaps if Mummy had been around, then I would have spoken to Mummy about it. But since she's not, then I speak to my siblings or my grandma or my aunt or my friends or something. And you just kind of, there's always more people that can try and between them fill that hole and that need and that whatever. It's not like when I play rugby and there's all my family there, I don't think, oh, I feel like I'm missing out because Mummy's not there. Like, I just go, wow, this is amazing. My family's all here. Like, look at them all supporting me. This is incredible.
Has that always been the case, or is that the case more recently?
Definitely more. Well, no, I think it's always been the case in that I've just been like, look, like my whole family are here.
Yeah.
But yeah, you kind of. It's really difficult.
Yeah.
It's really difficult to put it into words. I guess you kind of, because you never forget. You never like, oh, I forgot that Mo wasn't there. Like, but you just. You're like that. Everything's just reshaped.
You're forced to adapt, aren't you?
Yeah, absolutely, and everything is reshaped, and that just becomes the new normal. And I think that as much as possible, you can then, having lived through your experience, you can help other people when they inevitably at some point go through some sort of loss.
Yeah. And
whether that's just talking to them or being there for them, or everyone always says there's no manual, there's no book to follow.
Yeah.
But I think just doing anything small helps. Like, no, there's no right way to do things. I don't think there's necessarily a wrong way to do things either, as long as you're doing it from a good place. You know, you're trying to help, then I don't think you're going to do anything wrong.
So a couple of these people that I spoke to as well, and I'm very mindful not to give advice about things that I don't know anything about as well, which is why I asked the question, because I might be able to gain something from you that I might be able to pass back to them. So one or two of them have really, really struggled with getting over the way and the day that they found out about what it was that was up with one of their parents or their brother or sister.
Yeah.
Do you remember that moment?
Yep. Yeah. Certain moments are sketched into your mind. I'd finished school and my mum was in hospital actually with my dad, and my brother came pick me up, and it was like a big thing that all four of us needed to go to the hospital. So my brother picked me up. All four of us were in the car. We went to the hospital. We were sat on Mo's bed, and then she told us.
She told you?
Well, yeah, she told us, which was, that was pretty, like, a rough situation to be in. And we all reacted really differently, which is really, and I can remember it, but like, we all reacted totally differently. Like, I left. Some people, like, I think my sister kind of just, like, was in total denial from, like, the beginning. Well, I don't know whether they'll want me talking about it, but, like, it was very much like, no. I think Alex hugged my dad, and then I think I just left the room and was just like, I don't know what to do with this.
There was no right way of dealing with that.
And I ended up in like in a bathroom somewhere in the hospital, just like sobbing, like crying my eyes out. And then I went back and then was trying to like, okay, what should I do now? And the same sort of thing happened when my mum died. Like, we were all in the hospital like room as well. And I can remember, I've got a very vivid memory of like my grandma screaming, and then I like went out the room. Like, I couldn't cope with it, just left the room. My eldest brother Seb followed me. I think I fainted 3 times in the process of getting from there to the bathroom. He caught me every time. Like, I fell. I think there was a set of stairs, and I was going. I don't really remember the getting down the stairs, but I just remember him like lifting me up and carried me. We were in the men's room. We went into the men's toilet as well. I remember that. Yeah. And he was just there, like, with both of us just crying. He's trying to be the like grown adult that's like
support,
looking after everyone. He was 23, like, he's not old at all, but he was there like trying to sort himself out, being like, egg himself on. Like, I think he slapped himself around the face a couple of times, just being like, stop it, you got to be there for the people that are around you, blah, blah, blah. And then we went back up to the room, and it was just like, I mean, there are certain moments in your life that you can remember.
Do you have a vivid memory so that's obviously a really challenging time. You also had another challenging time regarding, so you had a lot of success with coming through the ranks really, really quickly with uni, with rugby, with Wasps, and then going into the England setup and getting your first run out and all this stuff. You're included in the Six Nations with England in, I think, 2020. Yeah. Which obviously is a huge accolade.
Cool. Yeah.
After you've got your professional contract offered the year before, and then you've had the injury in training.
Yeah.
Which, again, after reading loads of stuff on BBC and stuff about how that's come about, again, it's got to be a huge knock to the system, really, because your career fast-tracked.
Yeah.
You obviously, you know, these people that have been doing this a long time hold you in high regard at such a, you know, different phases at a young age. You know, you've galvanised and forced those opportunities on yourself because you're good enough, and people have got I understand you're going to be a great player, and you've got a lot, you know, captaincy at Wasps, you know, it's a massive honour. You know, there could have been tons of people that could have done that role potentially, and you were the one that were chosen at that time.
Yeah.
How, you know, what's the situation now? You mentioned before we went sort of live on this that you're on your way to have some more work done and therapy and stuff like that. So how did it come about, and how are you getting on with it now?
Yeah. So I was in a training session just before the autumn internationals actually started, so a couple of days before our first test against New Zealand.
Yeah.
I got a ball from the line out on our 5 metre, and like we're playing England v England, we know what we're doing. The opposition don't compete; they just flood through, go for the ball. You know, very sensible decision in that situation. So I get tackled, probably my own fault. I fought back against it because I knew I was so close to the try line, so I fight back against it. Try and drive back, and then I think because I delay it, then all the forwards then join, and I just get like mushed underneath this like heap of forwards, which for any scrum half is probably not the place you want to be. But no. I think my head ends up in a bit of a vulnerable place, so because I was driving forward, head tucked, all the weight and the pressure and everything came through my head and sort of compressed my neck to my chest. And it was painful from the get-go, and I remember being like, oh, my neck, and everybody kind of like stopped. You know, people take head injuries and neck injuries very seriously, and rugby, we're very fortunate with that. So everyone stopped, backed off, physios and whatever came over. It was sore from the get-go, but we just thought it was a soft tissue thing. So you know, as is relatively standard in rugby. But like I really don't take painkillers. Like I just never really take them. But for this particular one, I was like going down to the doctor being like, can I have some more of those? Like I definitely need more of those. I lived with a hot water bottle around my neck for probably the next 6 days, but it was only 2-3 days till we played again rugby. And like one of the girls, Rido, asked me, I was making a coffee, she goes, Claude, how's your neck? This is like 2 days later, and I was like, it's good, thanks, mate. And like turned my entire body, and I was like, I think it's really good actually, And she just like burst out laughing and was like, are you joking me? Like,
you can't move.
You've not even registered that you haven't even turned your head, you've just turned your entire body. But no, it was okay. So we treated it as soft tissue. That's what we assumed it to be. I played the game against New Zealand, played the second game, played the third game against Canada, and then after that, a few more symptoms sort of started creeping up, and a few things.
That's crazy that you've gone and played 3 games after you've done it.
And retrospectively, a few things that had happened in those 3 weeks, we were like, oh, maybe they were related. But at the time, like, they were all really like innocuous. So I had like a pain in this finger on my left hand, and it was like it being like popped out. I'd caught it in a bib or caught it in a shirt or something, and it was like a really weird. It was like an achy pain. And I remember going to physio being like, "This is so strange." Like I don't remember.
You know, you didn't feel it was.
No, and I was like, I don't remember doing anything. And they were like, "Oh, I think you've just aggravated the capsule." And I was like, "Oh, okay, fair enough. Like that makes sense." I must have caught it and not realising the moment I'd caught it. And then I was getting pain in my lat. But I'd also, in the first game, popped a sublux to my thumb. So I'd been for an MRI scan on my thumb, and in the MRI scan, you literally sit like this. For like 45 minutes. So I was like, it must be really tight.
You've just strained it.
The scan, from being in that weird position and not being able to move for 40 minutes. So then that one, I kind of explained through that, and then after the Canada game, I was getting like my whole arm was just. Like achy, pins and needly, like felt totally different. Felt totally different to this one, like all the time. And then after that, it remained like that for about 6-7 weeks, which was quite scary to have your whole left arm, like on the verge of going into sort of pins and needles at every moment. So that was a bit bizarre. We ended up obviously getting we got an MRI scan pretty quickly as soon as that came up after the Canada game, and turned out I had what did I have? Essentially a bulging disc at one of the levels, which had compressed my spinal cord and moved it to one side. And then I had 2 more bulging discs above it that were also cutting off the nerve root a little bit. But it was the one at the lowest level that was causing the real issues, because obviously my spinal cord was displaced. And on the MRI scan, it's really bizarre. Like it just doesn't look right. And obviously that's a very quick decision for the surgeon. He was like, you can't play. You can't play any contact sport with a scan like that, with a neck like that, because you know, a degree of contact, the spinal cord was already pushing against the bone at the back. Yeah. So if you get another bash to that,
you're playing the wrong sport.
Yeah, basically, you're instantly damaging your spinal cord, which, you know, is not something that anybody goes out of their way to do.
No.
So that ruled me out of rugby, and I kind of went from sitting on a bench and being told, oh, you might not play for the next 5 weeks. And I remember being devastated at that point, and I was like,
because you're like doing really well,
and that was the first tournament that I came out of. I was like, oh, I finally kind of like showed a little bit of what I can do, and I was, you know, I was happy for probably the first time ever about my performance. The first one more than the Canada one, and the second New Zealand one was all right, but I was just like, oh, right at the very very
happened at the wrong time,
breaking through and just sort of like trying to put your name on a shirt sort of thing. And then it happens, and they were like, you might not play till the big game, which was mid-December. It was actually our 27th of December Christmas game, and I was like, okay, that's devastating. I had a little cry to myself, really.
And this
upset.
was last year, wasn't it? 2021,
the Christmas just gone. And I found that in itself really upsetting, and then went for the scan, and then even from that it was like, okay, maybe 2-3 weeks, and we'll rescan it and see if it's any better. And we went through that process of scanning every like 2-3 weeks for probably 2 months. And each time I'd be like, oh, maybe it'll be better this time, maybe it'll be better this time.
No change.
No change. Right. No change at all over the whole time. And then we sat down with a couple of surgeons, and they gave me a couple of surgical options. And it took me a long time to decide whether to have the surgery or not to have the surgery, and that hung over me like all day, every day. You know.
How long did it take you to make the decision to? Because you didn't have surgery.
No, it didn't. The first time surgery was put on the table was in, I think, January. Right. It wasn't until being in March, I think, I decided not to have surgery. But in that time, I had a different surgical option put on the table. Yeah. But I ended up turning it down because, you know, I spoke a lot with my family. I'd obviously come late to rugby, which I think was quite an influencing factor in it too, in terms of, you know, my entire life hadn't been around rugby, and I'd already achieved a lot in the time that I had. No, I hadn't achieved what I wanted to. I hadn't gone to the World Cup. I hadn't played in that Six Nations. I didn't feel like I'd earned the shirt yet. I hadn't put my name on that shirt. But having said that, you know, the surgery was kind of, okay, you're going to have one surgery, you might then need a second surgery. If you have the second surgery, you're going to retire, and it was, these are the risks of the surgery, and kind of when I weighed it all up, I was like, whoa, and I'm 26, and I'm deciding to have this, you know, quite intrusive surgery on my neck, and they're coming through the front, which also, you know, had additional risk factors of like little things like your voice box might be damaged, and your vocal cords might be damaged, and you'll have like a husky voice for the rest of your life. And I was like, okay, like I'm not against the idea, but you know, it's just another thing to consider.
But I suppose those sort of things are like, they're big life body changes.
Yeah.
Maybe I don't want to speak for you, but that in my head would come above going back and playing rugby again. As much as you're passionate about rugby, this is like your life. That's potentially changing,
Yeah, that's the way I kind of had to try and see it. And like, obviously there's the risk of, as there is with any spinal surgery, there's a risk of paralysis from surgery itself. Yeah. And I was just like...
scary though, that.
Yeah, it was terrifying. And that you're thrown a stat, and you play that stat over and over in your head, and you're like, okay, would I play a game of roulette for that stat? And I'd be like, no, you wouldn't. Yeah. And it's not the same at all, obviously, but I was kind of like, no, I wouldn't. Okay, so, and I could live my entire life. The only thing I couldn't do was contact rugby. I couldn't do contact sport. I could go and play touch rugby if I wanted to. I could go, I could play every sport under the sun as long as there's no contact element. So I was just like, I am having this neck surgery purely to allow me to play rugby, no other reason. Yeah. And I ended up just not being able to justify it in my head, however important rugby was to me. I couldn't justify it. So I turned it down. which means that I'm basically in a waiting game. So
where is it at the minute? Like, what is this? So that was January. We're now June.
Yeah, June.
I nearly forgot where it was then. June going into July. So what's the kind of update on that now?
So I've been training fully the entire time in terms of everything bar the actual contact part.
Yeah. So you're still training now with Wasps?
Yeah. Yeah. So I've been a nuisance running defence basically all season, like the ultimate team bin juice. Like, yeah. That's been me. Just trying to help the team develop as much as possible. But yeah, so I'm just waiting really for someone to turn around and tell me that I can return to contact sport, which is a possibility. I have to get scan results, and the scan results then lead to, if it improves itself, which is, that's a possibility. So it could improve itself. If that happens, then I get to do a return to contact, return to play, and that side's still open.
Yeah. What does your gut tell you? What do you think is going to happen?
Yeah, I mean, I think you've got to prepare for both. You've got to prepare for both outcomes 100%. Yeah. I think I'm in best case position for things to get better, so that I'm trying to see it with a positive light. So I think I've got to be okay with the fact that, when I made the decision, I may have fully retired myself from rugby forever, and that's okay. And I might never, having made that decision, I might never have played rugby again. I might never play rugby again. But then, at the same time, I'm like, I am young relative to the injury and whatever. Yeah. Fit, healthy. So, I'm hopeful that my body can repair itself. Which
I suppose there's no real rule around that, and there's no time scales that anyone can put on it. It's just kind of keep checking in on it, keep doing the work.
Basically, keep checking in, keep training in the background.
It's really nice that Wasps have kept that door open for you, though.
Yeah, no, they've been hugely supportive of it. So it's been pretty special. So being able to train has been huge for me as a person.
That must give you kind of a lift in your own head, being able to still be in amongst the people, you might not be able to go and do the contact, but you're still amongst the team environment.
Absolutely, it's not a total, you're not cut off at the umbilical cord. You're out living your own life. Still very attached, which has been great, and it's meant that I've still felt like a huge part of the Wasp squad and our development, our progress this season. Like trying to help players, trying to feed in where I can. Obviously, still build my skill set up. So still doing loads of passing and kicking sessions. My fitness is definitely gone, or at least disappeared to an extent. You just don't get it from not playing matches, but hopefully that is something that I can build back up again quickly if I need to. But there's still a hopeful part of me.
So what are the goals for you moving forward then? Just not just rugby, just life moving forward. What are you kind of punching for?
Yeah, so I was speaking to PwC, which is a company and consultancy basically, and I want to go into consulting in environmental and social and governance, which is ESG consulting.
So is this your Let's Talk 1%?
Yeah, so it ties in with my blog. So that's the kind of outside of rugby career aspirations, trying to get into that side of things. So working with huge corporates and big companies and little ones too, to sort of align their strategies and the way that they're going to build over the next while towards targets that are good for the environment and good for the social progressions and good for society and how we live our lives and whatever else. So
where's that passion come from? That's completely different.
Yeah, totally different to rugby. I don't know. I think I've always sort of cared about it. So when I was little, I'd run around after my siblings turning the taps off when we brushed our teeth. I was just I didn't understand why they didn't turn the tap off. And they'd bug me by brushing the teeth and turning it back on again. And I'd be you are wasting water. And it really got me every time. I'd be like, what is wrong with you? Just turn the tap off. It's not difficult. Just turn it off. So I do stuff like that, or I'm constantly thinking about what's bad, or if I put something in the wrong rubbish bin, I'll think about it for ages and then have to go back probably and get it out the wrong rubbish bin and put it into the recycling or whatever, sort it out and whatever. Even this, I was drinking this and it was bugging me a little bit because it's a bottle.
Yeah.
But no, I think these ones are recyclable, so yeah.
Hopefully.
Yeah, I think they are.
I just want to make sure you were hydrated because it's hot.
Oh my God, it's so hot as well. And I really appreciate it. It is, look, it's recycled, the whole thing's recyclable.
There you go, I meant that.
There you go. But no, I think I was always sort of aware of it, interested in it, and then when I was at uni I did my dissertation on fair trade and sort of like the reasons why people were motivated to buy fair trade, which is really interesting, and I tried to relate it to like people's personality traits and whether being a certain personality, a certain type of person aligned you more to like the brand images and conceptions of fair trade and whether that kind of aligned. It was just a really interesting thing to go into. So I just sort of guess I looked into that, I studied more into it, I picked up a couple of modules at uni that aligned a little bit more with it, and then it just sort of stayed something that I'm interested in. Like some of my favourite shops are those, I'm sure it's really boring, but those, some of my favourite shops are those ones that are like, you go in and you bring all your jars and you refill everything. I just love it. Like, I don't know why. I just absolutely love it. Like, I know that I'm spending like 4 times as much as I would at the supermarket, but I'm like, oh yeah, bought my jars, fill them all up.
Get them filled.
I just love it.
Yeah, well, look, if that's a passion that's you're trying to infuse around other people and businesses and stuff, and like you need people like you to start that conversation off.
Yeah, and that's what
for it to snowball, hopefully, and then you'd like to think in the future that there'd be different legislations and different laws around, on the wider scale for businesses to make sure that people are doing things in a certain way to kind of all feed into that kind of climate change goal and aspirations and stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. That was the kind of idea. So I guess the career stuff is kind of top heavy, working with big companies and corporates and everything. And then the blog is very much like working with individuals.
Yeah.
And just sort of like, for me, it was just about staying aligned to myself and committing to it, and then others just creating conversations. Suddenly if you show that you're interested in something, then other people are like, oh, I'm actually really interested in that too, like we'll talk about it, or which has been probably the best part for me, just like so many people are really interested in it and want to talk about it. And
where can people find it?
It's on the easiest way is actually through my Instagram, which sounds a bit,
you put quite a bit of it on,
knobbish,
Twitter and stuff as well, don't you?
But Twitter and Instagram, because I haven't set up I tried to do the domain, but it was all too complicated. I'm not very tech savvy. I tried about 10 times and eventually gave up. So there's a link to it on my Instagram and I think on Twitter and LinkedIn if you're on LinkedIn.
Yeah, we'll make sure we share it and stuff when we go live and stuff. So is that something you regularly blog about?
So it used to be a lot more regular. I did it every month. It's now a lot less. Having said that, like it's kind of like you with your podcast. Like I've probably 5 articles already written that I just need to put on the blog. I don't know, like I judge myself and I'm like, is that good enough? Are people going to want to read it? Like, is it interesting? Is it valid? Like, and then you kind of are like, what leg do I have to stand on to talk about it? But then it's just a
blog is your views at the end of the day.
Just chuck it on there. If people read it, they read it. If they don't, they don't. Like it really doesn't matter. So like I definitely write more than I put on the blog.
I think you should go and put it all up.
I
think you should put it up. I'm going to check in a couple of weeks and be like, where's the blog? I haven't seen it.
You'll see like 5-6 posts just all posted on the same day.
Listen, you're going to get a message from me every week until something goes up. But no, I think it's important. I think, everyone's entitled to their views, and that's the whole point of having a podcast or a blog or a social media account or whatever. Everyone's entitled to give their say. Doesn't mean that everyone has to listen to it, but it sounds like you're talking sense. So
hopefully.
I think there will be people that will probably share your views as well. So look, there's been tons of stuff we've spoken about, which is great. If people want to sort of reach out about anything in particular, whether it be your rugby, anything personally, stuff around your Let's Talk 1% blog, where can they find you as best way to do it?
Drop me a message on any of the social media is probably best. So Instagram is Claude_MacDonald. I've spent my whole life being called Claude. I don't think anyone's ever called me Claudia. And Twitter is CF_MacDonald, I think.
Oh, well done for remembering that.
Double check it.
Well done for remembering that. Either way, when the podcast goes live, we'll tag you in on the stuff, and people will be able to see it nice and easy anyway.
And feel free to reach out, talk, ask me any questions. I'll respond to. But even if it's just a thanks or enjoyed this bit, then I'd love to hear it.
Yeah. Do you know what? I think there's been people will understand this when they listen and watch the podcast, but the reason why I wanted to get you on is because I think you've got a very unique journey in areas that people may not have themselves experience in, i.e. elite sport, or other areas that have been more challenging, like losing family or whatever. So I think there's tons of takeaways, and it's been really, really good, because I think you speak about it in a very positive. I get an air of positivity no matter what, an air of competitiveness, but the right level of competitiveness. I get an air of obsessiveness, but I mean that in a positive way, because I think that if you can channel that obsession into something, then you can go and do something special, and you've clearly done that with what you've done with your rugby and stuff like that. You're in an envious position as well. You've got family around you, you've got tons of stuff going for you, and you've done a lot in your 26 years, and I think it's been really, really interesting. I've certainly taken a lot of stuff from it, and I always re-listen to these episodes, end up writing loads more notes and different things that I've taken from it and stuff. So if I'm speaking on behalf of anybody watching it, I think there'll be tons of takeaways for people, and knowing about the demographic that we have and what they want to hear and what they want to listen to, there's tons of people that are going to be really aligning themselves with some of the things that you've been through, and also the position that you're in at the moment as well. And I just think that you've got a general positive optimism around dealing with situations, and that's the air that I get, even though you've been through good and bad, but everybody has, and it's how you deal with it that defines who you are.
Absolutely. I think just talking about it, like even us just talking about it here, I'm like, that's you realise that things aren't as bad as they seem. Like even when I talk about them, I talk about them more positively than perhaps I do otherwise. You're like, okay, it's not that bad. Like,
But also you've been really honest around certain things and what you found hard and what you've struggled with, and I think there's been some really good takeaways for people that are in the same boat, or that may be in the same boat at some point, and they can hopefully take some information to try and deal with their situation. So just from knowing the audience, I think there's tons of stuff there that's little nuggets of things, as well as your just general journey that they'll be loving to sort of listen to and watch and stuff. So I hope so as well. So no, thanks for coming on, Claudia. I really appreciate you giving us some time, and we'll let you go.
Amazing. Thanks so much for having me.
Since this podcast was recorded, Claudia is back playing and scoring tries for England, and is part of the recently announced World Cup squad for the Red Roses. Well done, Claudia.